Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to trace the path to the world's deadliest conflict. And you'll see it wasn't just one single event, but this chain reaction, like a snowball of resentment and chaos that just kept getting bigger and bigger until it became this unstoppable avalanche of war. And this is what that avalanche cost us. An estimated 70 to 85 million human lives. It's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around. This is the end of the story. But to understand how in the world we got here, we have to rewind back to the end of the last Great War.
So where does it all begin? Well, not with a bang, but with the stroke of a pen. It starts with a peace treaty signed in Versailles, France, back in 1919. A treaty that was supposed to end all wars, but instead, it planted the seeds for the next one.
The terms were just brutal. The victorious powers forced Germany to pay crippling reparations, they stripped away valuable territory, they slashed its military down to almost nothing, and, maybe worst of all, they made Germany accept 100% of the blame for the war. It was designed to make sure Germany could never be a threat again. But back in Germany, nobody saw this as a real peace treaty. They saw it as a national humiliation. They called it a diktat, a dictated peace, something just shoved down their throats. And that feeling, that sense of being wronged, it planted this deep, deep seed of resentment and a powerful hunger for revenge. And that seed of resentment, well, it was about to get watered by a complete and total global economic catastrophe. It was the perfect storm for radical, dangerous promises to find an audience. The financial collapse on Wall Street didn't just stay in America. Oh no, it spread like an absolute wildfire, hopping from country to country, bringing entire economies to their knees and throwing millions of people into poverty and utter desperation. Just think about this number. By the early 1930s, that's how many people were unemployed in Germany alone. 6 million people. No work, no money, no hope. This kind of environment is fertile ground for extreme ideas and for charismatic leaders who promise very simple solutions to incredibly complex problems. In Italy, you had leaders like Benito Mussolini who had already seized on this kind of post-war chaos. Fascism gave people who felt lost a powerful story. Follow one strong leader, believe in your nation above all else, and use war to reclaim your glory. Then in Germany, Adolf Hitler took that a step further. He gave desperate people easy scapegoats for all their troubles, and he made them a promise. We will tear up that humiliating treaty, we will make Germany great again, and we will expand our nation by conquering Lebensraum, living space, in the East. Okay, so you've got these dictators grabbing more and more power. What's next? They start to push. They start testing the boundaries of the international system, just to see what they can get away with. And what they found was that the world's will to stop them was shockingly weak. And the first major test didn't come from Europe. It came from Asia. Japan, needing resources for its growing military machine, just went in and seized the massive Chinese territory of Manchuria. The world's new peacekeeping organization, the League of Nations, basically just wagged its finger. It condemned the action, sure, but it had no army, no real power to do anything about it. So what did Japan do? It just quit the League and kept Manchuria. And this inaction sent a loud, crystal-clear message to every other ambitious dictator out there. The lesson was simple. If you're bold enough, if you're aggressive enough, you can take what you want. The world will pretty much just watch. And you know who was paying close attention? Mussolini in Italy. He followed Japan's playbook exactly. He launched a brutal invasion of Ethiopia in Africa, all in the name of building a new Roman Empire.
And again, the world's response was pathetic. The League put some sanctions on Italy, but they were weak. Crucially, they didn't even ban the sale of oil, which was the one thing that could have stopped the Italian war machine. So the lesson was reinforced. Aggression pays off. Again.
So you see, these weren't just a series of random events anymore. Things were accelerating. That snowball was rolling downhill, picking up speed. You have resentment, economic collapse, and aggression all feeding off each other, and the world's democracies just seemed frozen, completely unable to stop it. Now, you have to remember, countries like Britain and France were haunted by the memory of World War I. Millions had died in the trenches. The last thing they wanted was another war, so they chose a policy that they desperately hoped would prevent one. It was called appeasement. The strategy was, in theory, simple. Give Hitler some of what he wants to satisfy his demands. So he annexed Austria. The world did nothing. Then they gave him a piece of Czechoslovakia, believing his promise that it was his last demand. But of course, just months later, he broke that promise and took the rest of the country. The policy was a complete failure. Every concession didn't satisfy Hitler, it just made him bolder and hungrier for more. By the summer of 1939, that snowball was at the bottom of the hill, and it was massive. The stage was set for one last, absolutely shocking diplomatic move that would clear the final obstacle to a full-blown war in Europe. In a move that stunned absolutely everyone, the world's two biggest enemies, Nazi Germany and the Communist Soviet Union, signed a pact. Publicly, they just promised not to attack each other, but secretly, they made a deal to slice Poland right down the middle and each take a piece. With the Soviet Union now on his side, or at least not as an enemy, Hitler had his green light. He no longer had to fear a war on two fronts. On September 1st, he unleashed his Blitzkrieg, his lightning war on Poland. And that was the final domino. The policy of appeasement was dead and buried. Honoring their promise to defend Poland, Britain and France issued an ultimatum to Germany. It was ignored, and so they declared war. World War II in Europe had begun. Which brings us right back here to this number. The ultimate horrifying cost of that long chain of events. A chain that started with the ink on a peace treaty and ended, just 2 decades later, in the devastation of an entire planet. But it leaves us with the big question. Was all of this inevitable? Historians still argue about it today. Could a stronger stance earlier, against the invasion of Manchuria or Ethiopia, or when Germany first put troops back in the Rhineland, could that have stopped the snowball before it became an avalanche? It is one of history's most critical and most haunting questions.